My name is Troy Snyder, and I was one of the costume designers for this production, and it was my first time working with Vintage Theater. The process of designing for the theater is essentially to put a visual representation of the play on stage. And costumes is the most intimate of the three areas of design that I work in, being sets, costumes, and lighting. Costumes are the one area of design that is most closely tied to the personality of the characters in the play. If you think about the way that we dress, the clothing that we choose to wear every day reflects some part of our personality. And that's what costumes do in a production. They reflect the personality of the character in the play. So if a costume designer is doing their job, the moment that character walks into the playing space, you should be able to know something about them just based on the way they're dressed, the kind of makeup that they're wearing, and the way their hair is fixed. The Midsummer process started back in the summer, and we had design meetings online. And in this play, the challenge is to create three distinct worlds. You have the world of the ruling class, and you have the world of the fairies, and then you have the world of the working class. And there are three distinct worlds in the play, and then the comedy of the piece comes from the interaction and the conflict between these three worlds. The world of the ruling class is just some ways to describe it would be ordered and conformed and regular, I guess, is a way to say it. The world of the fairies was more chaotic, was more rebellious, was more magical. And then you have the Rustic Mechanicals in the piece, who are the third world, and they're the working class members of society in the world of the play. So we chose in the ruling class to do a couple things. You'll see in the costumes that there's a hint of maybe not a hint, more than a hint, of some military uniforms, which indicates a kind of conformity. You'll see the lovers, the two couples, not necessarily military, but their dress is more of conformity. And some of the ways that we looked at it was that if you looked at teenagers in movies in the 80s, and there's always the preppy is a look from those movies. There's the slacker, and so those were ways that we chose within that world of the ruling class to make each character distinct, because Shakespeare has created a band of really distinct characters in this piece. So that's our job, is to enforce that distinction or reinforce that distinction in the piece. Then in the fairies were more rebellious, so you'll see elements of rock and roll and punk and magic in their costumes. And then the mechanicals, you'll see a lot of elements of uniforms, but work uniforms. You might see just specific examples. One of the mechanicals was a welder. One was a waiter, one was a construction foreman. So you'll look at those and you'll see that the mechanicals are really the heart of the working class in the piece. When I introduced myself, I said I was one of the costume designers, and that's because that's literally the case. There were several costume designers in this piece. I teach at Fairmont State University, and as a part of a class assignment, my students served as the design team for the costumes of the piece. And each student in the class was assigned 2 or possibly 3 actors, and that includes myself. I was assigned also two actors. And our responsibilities were to design each costume for that actor. Now, each actor played at least 2 parts in the piece. Some played more than that, up to 4 parts. So what that would mean is that one student working with one actor might be designing the costumes for 3 or 4 characters. So we were really a collaborative team working together to do this. And I think that for me personally, the reason that I enjoy doing costumes is because it really is a chance to work one-on-one with the actor. If you're designing scenery, you build the scenery, you put it on stage, the actors act in, on, and around it. And as a set designer, I don't interact much with the actors. I don't talk to them. I don't, not that I don't want to. It's just not something I have to do. And the same with lighting design. Costume designing, you really work one-on-one with the actor. Because as a costume designer, you start with the actor's body, and every actor has a different body, and so you have to get to know that actor and know their body. You know, a couch is a couch, but a costume has to be tailored to the actor. So there's a different kind of bond between a costume designer and an actor. There's a lot more trust that has to be created. Actors, and this is the beautiful thing about actors, tend to be vulnerable about their appearance, and it's part of your job as a costume designer to make that actor feel comfortable. And you may be putting them in something that they don't feel is that they're comfortable in. And it's a beautiful thing when an actor can put away that kind of vulnerability and end up serving the character. To look good in that costume and to feel good and to serve the play. Yeah, in this process, I worked with a very qualified designer, Sam Huffman, who's the hair and makeup designer, who's also a former student, and that was a lot of fun to work with Sam in that way. And one of the things I had to keep reminding the students is that, and myself, I guess, the design stops at the neck. You know, we can't control what's going to happen from here up. So that was always one caution that we worked under, is that we had to keep in mind that we had to also incorporate the third part of this design would be hair and makeup, and that we had to coordinate with what they were going to do. And then sometimes the designers would have input into what the hair and makeup was going to be, but it was just a little bit, one more layer of the cake that we were baking was that we were just working with a hair and makeup designer who wasn't always in the room, metaphorically speaking, because sometimes none of us were in the room. Well, doing this during a pandemic was challenging, as everything has become. But there were some interesting complications this time, in that where the show was the performances were scheduled was early in October, and our semester starts the middle of August. So typically, a project like this would be the end project in a semester. We'd work up toward this over several weeks, and this would be the final hurrah for the semester, would be to do a design. Well, I walked into class on day one, and I said, hey, listen, we're going to design some costumes for a Shakespeare play, and we've got 6 weeks to do it. And I might add that when I said this, there was nobody else in the room with me. We were all over the internet talking to each other. So the design process is very collaborative, and I think it works best when people are in the same room and they're sharing the same energy and the same oxygen, and this put kind of an interesting spin on it as well. So I had a team of designers who through no fault of their own didn't really know what they were doing. didn't know what they were getting into, and then weren't sure of the process of how we were going to work, and didn't know from one day to the next if it was actually really ever going to happen. And so we were all, and I think, what you find out is that as humans and as artists, we're really adaptable, and we can find a way to work under any circumstances. So we're all, sharing research online and sharing files and sharing, websites and sharing those kind of things, when normally I would just be saying, show me pictures, bring in some pictures, show me some pictures, and I want to hold them in my hands and look at them. And so what we had to do this time was just completely different. But, in the end, you still have to put clothing on actors. So the process was, there wasn't much sewing. It was all costumes that were pulled or bought or found through other sources. So I still had to go, to Goodwill on a Saturday, and shop. Thank goodness for online shopping. I mean, that has made designing, before COVID, has made designing so much easier, because the world is your shopping place. I thought about the idea that I was actually doing a show. I said that several times to my students, is that, we're really doing something. And it was something that I hadn't done. I haven't designed costumes. It's been quite a while, and hadn't designed really since February. So that thought, how fortunate that I was, and thankful to be working, was really joyous. Part of what I hadn't planned on is becoming involved in the performances. But it became clear to me that one actor just had more costume changes than was fair. It just wasn't fair, the number of costume changes that Sam had. So I thought, well, this is my design, and I've kind of created this problem, this challenge for Sam, and I have to own that, and I have to be a part of that solution. So typically in a show like this, I think the actors help each other, but costume changes, I don't know, we timed them, and 30 seconds doesn't sound like a long time, but it's a long time to do a costume change. And a minute it's like, that's like having 2 hours to do a costume change. In this, some of the costume changes were seconds. I mean, 15, 20 seconds. And because of the look of the show, and I hope you can see that in the video, they're complete costume changes. And that was a challenge. And so I went into the show as a dresser, just for one actor, because it wouldn't have happened. The show wouldn't have happened. The video that you see, I know there's editing and all that, but the performances were done in real time. There was no stopping and starting and saying, can we hold? I needed to finish this costume change. There was none of that. So I stood backstage a lot, and I thought about, at some point, this play is, a round off, 600 years old, 500 years old. And at some point, there was a guy standing backstage at the Globe Theater doing the same thing I was, helping an actor get through a series of costume changes that were impossible to execute. And I felt part of a process that had, more so than I think I ever had, that had been going on, for 400 or 500 years. And that was really joyful for me.